Well, I'm back. I said I wouldn't do another one of these videos unless the last one performed well, but I'm a liar. Anyways, I heard you guys' critiques, and I've adjusted. Hopefully this goes well, but shout out CFT Aviation for the idea, and today we're going to be going over the history of AirDo. Without further ado, let's get into it. As we previously glossed over this in the Skymark video, Japan's aviation industry was heavily regulated by the Japanese government in the form of set fares and select route licensing for airlines. These regulations were enforced by the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau, or JCAB for short. Any airline that wanted to start up a new route would have to seek approval from the JCAB, and if they were approved, they'd have to abide by set prices. These regulations not only limited competition, but limited growth for airlines and the industry as a whole. Eventually, under pressure from Japanese airlines, these regulations would be completely abolished towards the end of the 1990s. That basically simplifies everything for regulations, but if you want a slightly more detailed breakdown of Japanese aviation industry regulations, I'd recommend tapping into my Skymark video. After all, I gotta drive traffic to my videos somehow. But anyways, I might do a dedicated video on the breakdown of regulations in the future. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. With the last of these regulations being dropped in 1996, this would see multiple startups, including the aforementioned Skymark Airlines and Skynet Asia, but one of these startups would include today's topic, AirDo. Hokkaido International Airlines, which will be referred to as HIA from now on until its rebrand for simplicity, would be founded by an entrepreneur named Toru Hamada on November 11, 1996. Hamada, whose primary business ventures include a poultry farm based in Hokkaido, saw an opportunity to enter the airline industry, like many other wealthy businessmen in Japan at the time. Hamada's plan envisioned to create a low-cost carrier with an emphasis on connecting Hokkaido to Japan's other major cities. Hamada would use his connections in order to raise capital for the startup venture, with the majority of the funds coming from 30 unnamed individuals, with the remainder of the funds being provided by some of Japan's largest companies, such as Hokkaido Electric Power Company, Kyocera, Tokyo Marine and Fire Insurance, as well as multiple local government bodies in Hokkaido. Because of Hamada's business background, the airline's unofficial moniker would become the Poultry Farmers Airline. With funding secured, it was time for HIA to choose a base. Sapporo, which is the largest city in Hokkaido, as well as doubling as the capital of Hokkaido Prefecture, was chosen to be the airline's headquarters. Like many other major cities in Japan, Sapporo has two airports, Okadama and New Chitose. Okadama Airport, which is a smaller, more centrally located airport at the heart of Sapporo, which at the time as well was exclusively used for connecting Sapporo to other major cities in Hokkaido, with ANA's regional subsidiary, Air Nippon Network, being the main tenant at the airport, as well as the Japan Air System making a move to establish a new regional subsidiary, which would later be founded as Hokkaido Air System and start limited operations at Okadama. With the upcoming deregulation, the city of Sapporo would propose to extend Okadama's runway to 2,000 meters to handle larger aircraft. However, with shades of the previous situations with the construction of Kansai and Narita, protests would shut this proposal down. 2 years later, in 1998, a compromise would be reached, in which the runway would be extended to 1,500 meters. However, the daily capacity would be limited, being capped off for 44 takeoffs and landings. This would severely limit the operations at Okadama Airport. With this revelation, HIA would turn its attention to the larger New Chitose Airport. HIA would apply and secure its air operator certificate from the Ministry of Air Transport in October 1996, and with this, operations would be scheduled to commence for July 1998. HIA would also start using the AirDo branding in order to advertise its airline, but HIA would secure an undisclosed amount of slots at Tokyo Haneda Airport and New Chitose Airport around this time, and finalize a long-term deal from Ansett Worldwide Aviation Services on a brand new 767-300ER, which would be delivered on February 13th, 1998. This aircraft would be delivered with the registration November 767 Alpha November until it could be registered in Japan, which it would be a month later, taking up the registration Juliet Alpha 98 Alpha Delta. Maintenance and ground services would be outsourced to Japan Airlines, and with the final arrangements in place, HIA would begin promoting its tickets at 60% of the competition's fares, leading up to its intended launch date of July 1998. The airline's launch date would be pushed back, but I can't find a reason for this. But HIA would begin services on December 20th with 3 round trips per day between Sapporo New Chitose and Tokyo Haneda. New Chitose to Haneda is not only the busiest domestic route in Japan, but it's the second busiest domestic routing in the world, only behind South Korea's Jeju to Seoul Gimpo. This meant that there would be major competition on this routing. They would be competing with Japan's big three of ANA, Japan Air System, and Japan Airlines. Initially, with its competitive pricing, they would see initial success with high load factors. HIA would continue on as normal up until 2000. HIA, in order to compete with the established big three of Japan, would secure another long-term lease on a 767-300ER. This 767-300ER was 2 years old at the time, and previously spent time with Citybird Airlines of Belgium until the airline would go bust. It would be delivered on April 26, 2000, and enter service sometime after with registration Juliet Alpha 01 Hotel Delta. HIA would continue to grow, seeing its millionth passenger in December of 2000, which would lead the Hokkaido Prefecture government to buying a major stake at the company, injecting some much-needed capital into the airline. With this as well, they would install one of their senior officials into the company. Sometime between 2000 and 2002, HIA would repaint its 767s into logo jets in order to bring in some much-needed revenue. Juliet Alpha and 98 Alpha Delta would be the first to be repainted, wearing both Calbee and Tacoma titles. Juliet Alpha 01 Hotel Delta would be repainted sometime later into an unknown sponsor's livery. Juliet Alpha 01 Hotel Delta would wear its livery up until between October 2006 and January 2007, with Juliet Alpha 98 Alpha Delta being repainted again into an additional logo jet in 2004, which I can also not find out the sponsor of, but they would wear this livery up until the end of 2005. Leading into 2001, HIA's competitors began to take ever-increasing notice of the small startup airline. Since HIA was a small startup with limited capital and only having one route, it was vulnerable to undercutting. Japan Airlines, Japan Air System, and ANA, their main strategy was to expand its frequent flyer programs in order to prevent its customer base from switching to not only HIA, but Skymark as well. Japan's big three airlines combined for 8.8 million registered members in its frequent flyer programs at the time, limiting AirDo's potential customers. JAS, ANA, and JEL would also cut its fares by up to 40% to incentivize more people to come back to the big three. Skymark was minimally affected by this, but HIA was heavily affected. As I mentioned, it only had one route, so there was less incentive to stay with HIA. As soon as Japan's big three made these changes, HIA's load factor would drop from 80% to 50%. Being a low-cost carrier, HIA's profit margins were thin, and they relied on a high load factor in order to bring in profit. With that being taken away, they began hemorrhaging cash. Since it was 2001, you know what comes next, and this put another dent into HIA's ever-dwindling load factor. HIA would continue to stagger into 2002, in which its cash reserves began to run out. This would lead HIA into approaching the Hokkaido prefectural government in order to receive a much-needed cash injection. However, they would deny their request. HIA would enter civil rehabilitation in June 2002, with debts at an estimated $150 million. As we mentioned before, this prevents creditors from seizing assets and gives breathing room in order to restructure. After being denied by the Hokkaido prefectural government, the Japanese federal government would step in the form of the Development Bank of Japan. ANA would also pick up a 14% stake, in which with this investment, they would begin a co-sharing agreement, as well as allowing HIA to operate from the north side of ANA's upcoming Terminal 2 at Tokyo Haneda Airport, which was scheduled to open in 2004. HIA would exit civil rehabilitation in December 2002, with one of the key takeaways in its civil rehabilitation plan being to increase the amount of routes it operated. HIA would have planned to commence new routes from Haneda to Asakawa in July 2003, and Haneda to Hakodate in March 2004. With the announcement of these new routes, HIA would pick up a 767-200 lease from ANA. HIA would continue past 2004 and into 2005, announcing a new route from Haneda to Memabetsu. HIA would double back and withdraw its 767-200, and instead pick up a 737-400 and 767-300. Both of these aircraft also leased from ANA. In August, HIA would hit its 5 millionth passenger milestone, further solidifying its hold in the Japanese aviation market. HIA's efforts of connecting Hokkaido to Tokyo would not go unnoticed. They would be granted the title of Designated Domestic Air Carrier, which entitled them to subsidies from the MLIT in order to keep certain routes open since they were seen as necessities, and there's no competition on them, and without them, those routes would be closed. In order to save some money and bolster their profit margins, they would gain their aircraft maintenance certification. They wouldn't outsource their maintenance, but rather use it for themselves. which would save them a great deal of money compared to if they continued to get their maintenance outsourced to other companies. Maintenance would still be done at the JEL hangars at Haneda, however, it would be done with their own technicians. Another 737-400 would be brought in during January 2006, bringing HIA's fleet to 4 aircraft. With the yen continuing to go strong against the US dollar, HIA would open up a frequent flyer program to coincide with the launch of their website, which they were previously reluctant to do. Their frequent flyer program was very generous, with 1 point being given out per 100 yen. For example, a bare fare round trip between Sapporo and Haneda would go for 12,300 yen, giving you 123 points. You'd also gain 100 points for free with every 6 flights in a year. A free bare fare round trip between Haneda and Sapporo could be redeemed for 1,200 points, but these don't really seem that generous for a budget airline, but it was a good way to drum up some business. HIA would secure leases on 737-500s from ANA, with the first one scheduled to be delivered in February 2008. November 2008 would see HIA open up a route between Sendai and New Chitose, which they'd also see their 10 millionth passenger, marking off yet another milestone for the airline. While everything was looking up, the 2008 global recession would start. With less people flying, HIA would see a major financial hit. They would withdraw both of their 737-400s, one of their 767-300s. To replace the 767-300, they would bring in a younger 767-300, which really makes no sense, but this aircraft would also be leased from ANA. With the global economy seeming to recover in 2009, HIA would continue its expansion. They would announce 5 new routes: Sapporo to Nagata, Sapporo to Fukushima, Sapporo to Toyama, Sapporo to Komatsu, and Obihiro to Haneda. Just a quick editor's note, I don't have an exact date on the introduction of the AirDo mascot, so if someone can let me know, that'd be appreciated. But at the latest, it was introduced by the end of 2010, but it could be introduced sometime before that, I have no clue. But it is important in the next segment, as you will see. But like advertisement-wise as well, like they'd put that on everything. Soup, jewelry, bags, hand cream, toys, you name it. But anyways, on to the next segment. HIA would secure leasing on yet another 737-500, with it scheduled to be delivered in 2011. During this time, Juliet Alpha 305 Kilo and Juliet Alpha 8196, both 737-500s, would be repainted into special liveries, with the company's mascot adorning both of them. Both of these aircraft would bear these liveries until the end of 2013, in which both aircraft would be returned to ANA. The company's name would officially be changed from Hokkaido International Airlines to AirDo in 2012, marking a new chapter for the airline. Around this time, AirDo would secure leasing on 5 737-700s, again, all from ANA. These 737-700s would wear the new AirDo livery, and all future aircraft would be painted into it. Although, most of the current aircraft in its fleet would not be repainted, excluding for some 767-300s. The older 737-500s would begin to be phased out in 2013, with the remaining ones scheduled to be withdrawn by the start of 2016. Another 767-300 would also be brought in during this time as well, to coincide with the name change. AirDo would begin domestic charter operations in 2012 as well, with most of these flights being chartered out for Hokkaido-based companies to Japan's major industrial centers such as Nagasaki, Hiroshima, etc. The company's route network would also be further bolstered with flights between Kashiro and Haneda, and Sapporo and Okayama. During this time as well, the company's headquarters would be moved to Tokyo. Everything was looking good for AirDo up until April 5th, 2013, when a 737-500 registered Juliet Alpha 8504, which was operating a charter flight between Haneda and Kashiro, when, during the approach to Kashiro, the crew accidentally shut down one of the engines in flight. The aircraft would land safely, however, during the subsequent investigation and report by the Japanese Transport Safety Board, they concluded that the pilots shut down one of the engines because they suspected that there was a fuel leak. In reality, there was no fuel leak. The Japanese Transport Safety Board also concluded that the pilot training wasn't adequate enough, and that there was faulty maintenance done on the aircraft. This would not be the only incident at AirDo, with the 767-300 bound for Asakawa experiencing engine troubles after departure from Haneda and being forced to return at the start of 2015. This would cause the MLIT to do an internal review, in which, again, maintenance and pilot training would be a key issue. These findings would be publicized, and AirDo would be forced to make drastic changes. This would briefly dent their public image, but they would quickly bounce back, adding yet again another new route, this time between Sapporo and Kobe. Charter operations would also be further increased to include international charter routes. AirDo would terminate routes between Sapporo and Fukushima, Nagata, Toyama, and Komatsu to support load factors in March 2015. AirDo would secure leasing for 3 more 737-700s and a single 767-300, all leased from ANA. The 767-300, Juliet Alpha 602 Alpha, would roll out of the ANA Osaka Irimi hangars, wearing a special livery, similar to the previous liveries on the 737-500s. It would remain in the same livery until its eventual withdrawal in the future. With the last of its 737-700s delivered, 2 of its older 767-300s would be withdrawn. New routes would be started using the 737-700s on Sapporo to Hiroshima, Sapporo to Centrair, and Hakodate to Centrair. The Sapporo to Hiroshima route would be, however, axed a little over a year later, along with the Sapporo to Okayama route. With its international charter routes continuing to be a consistent form of income, AirDo would secure leasing on 4 767-300 ERs, while one of its 737-700s would be returned to ANA. In 2020, as you're most likely familiar with, the pandemic would hit, putting a stop on global air travel. The pandemic was especially hard for AirDo, and since AirDo is not a publicly traded company, their financial reports aren't publicized, so it's hard to put an estimate on the damage they suffered. Another one of the late 90s startups was also seeing problems, Solicit Air. Solicit Air, formerly Skynet Asia, was also seeing financial troubles with the pandemic. A merger would be proposed, and a letter of intention would be signed. A merger made sense, since both of the airlines have so much in common with each other, such as both being low-cost carriers, being partnered with the ANA having a stake in both, and both having a base at Haneda. A merger was logical since they were both aforementioned low-cost carriers, and the route networks would complement each other, so integration would be easy. The merger would be approved on October 3rd, 2022, and a joint holding company would be established. The airlines would continue to operate independent of each other, and with this joint cooperation, it would allow both companies to bounce back. AirDo's first aircraft, which served the company loyally from the start, Juliet Alpha 98 Alpha Delta, would be withdrawn along with the remaining 767-300s. With the AirDo 767-300 being withdrawn, it was time for a replacement special livery. Juliet Alpha 607 Alpha, a 767-300ER scheduled to be delivered from All Nippon Airways, would receive a brand new Pokemon-themed livery, with Vulpix adorning the aircraft. I personally believe that this is the best special livery of all time, so I had to forego 80 CAD for a 1/400 bottle of it. But anyways, that really sums up AirDo's history. Like I said, if you've got any suggestions or critiques, just give me the word. But I'm going to let you guys go here. I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully more to come in the future. Peace.